Hi, folks. We're in the Cobb TV studios for our weekly chat with Cobb Commission Chairman Mike Boyce, our second edition of 2020, Chairman. And from the It's Always Something folder, issues pop up, sometimes expected, sometimes unexpected. And at the commission meeting Tuesday, we had a lot of comments about the upcoming primary.
Yes, it's interesting. I think that's the beauty of having open and transparent government, is that you prepare an agenda and you have items on there, and I'm always surprised that some things that I think might be controversial end up getting passed without comment, and some things that I believe, because of the background that went into it, should be one of those things that we move through without too much discussion, and I'm always wrong. So, yeah, but I think that's a testimony to the fact that the structure is a way that it brings out those issues and allows them to be put out before the public for comment. And remember, we published the agenda item. Some things like the changes in the precincts this week that we voted on have to be published in the Marietta Daily Journal. They have a board of elections where they're independent, and they consider these items before they're brought to us for a vote. And then during that vote, we have public comment and we have public discussion. We have commissioners making points of view, and then we vote on it. So, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to get what they want, but then nobody can say that we don't have a full airing of these things. And it's always a give and take, how much is enough and how much is not enough. But I just want to make a couple comments. Having more precincts has to always be a good thing. It gives more opportunity for people to vote. The locations, and I get about the fact that sometimes they're not the most convenient times, but I just want to tell people where I come from, is that during my time in Iraq, people, voting to them was a big deal because they never had the opportunity to do that. And I think we always remember that picture of those who read the newspaper or watch television, of the lady that stuck her finger up there and she had the purple dye on her finger saying that she had had a chance to vote. So when I say that voting is our most precious freedom, it comes from personal experience of being in places where they weren't allowed to do that. And then once given that opportunity, they understand, what a great benefit it is. But with voting comes responsibilities too. The thing about democracy or republic is that people have to get involved in order for that system to work. And when they get complacent, then you can have what we call the tyranny of the minority. And the voting process, cannot support that or, detract from it. The voting process is what it is. Our responsibility is to make sure that we provide maximum opportunities, given the resources that we have, for people to vote. And in the old days, when everybody would go vote on the first Tuesday of the month for national elections or whatever local elections, now we've expanded it to we have absentee ballots, we have early voting, we have early voting, and then we have voting. And yes, sometimes there's lines, but I think the thing we have to understand is that the reason last November, one of the reasons that there were lines is, well, two reasons really. First of all, there was a lot of interest in that campaign, which again shows how healthy our processes and our constituents are here in Georgia, not just Cobb County, that so many people wanted to come to vote. Because if you looked at the pictures, you probably took a lot of them, even early voting had long lines. And I'm sorry, the system's not set up to make it more convenient for you. The system is set up so that you can vote. And I think it's important that we take time out of our lives to go do that part, which is to vote in our representatives or for an issue. And I think the county does a great job of doing that. But the second reason there were lines last November is that during the race between John Ossoff and Karen Handel, there was a lawsuit that came after that, and a federal judge, in order to go through that litigation, locked up several of our voting machines.
A good percentage of them.
Yes, they did. So we had fewer machines prevail to a public where we had more people coming to vote. So I kind of look at long lines, voting as a sign of the same way I look at traffic. Yeah, traffic's bad, all right? So is standing in line for anything, not just voting. Because I think by nature, most Americans are very, want to get things done in a hurry. I get that part. But long lines in the voting reflect a public that's involved in the process, and a lot of traffic involves people that are going to work. So our job as a government is to find a way to address that topic as best that we can, given what we have. And I think it's also important to remember that in the 2018 budget, we added more staff members to Janine Evler's staff. I'd like to have done more, but again, given the resources, the limitations of our budget, that's the best we could do. And as we all know, that was a very controversial summer because, the millage rate was raised for a lot of reasons, and adding people to the voting process, the voting system was one of them, as well as doing for public safety and other things. So I just think that all in all, I appreciate the comments. I'm still getting emails. I read them all. They have good points of view, but again, I think the highest form of government you can have here that works is the one that compromises. What's the one where everybody gets something, but you can't get everything? And if your point of view is you want to have everything, then you're never going to have a government that's going to deliver what you want to have. And the last thing I remind everybody is what I call the speed of government. Nothing happens, at the speed of light and the speed of government. We have to go through this process of getting the voter input, processing that, having the commissioners discuss it, get it to the staff. It just takes time to make sure we get it right. And like Janine said at the meeting on Tuesday, she'd like to have done more, but there were places that she couldn't go to because nobody wanted to have that portion of their facility closed off for 3 weeks while we did early voting, all right? And there's a lot of things that go into all that here. And I look forward to a very, very vigorous and robust voting process at the primary in May, and also in November.
So the board approved what the Board of Elections and Registration already approved, is
Right.
moving 3 precincts and dividing some.
Right.
One thing kind of lost in this, I think, is after talking to Janine Evler, our elections chief, is that we're trying to get out of the schools because
Right.
of security concerns.
Exactly.
Things happen in
Right.
schools. They don't necessarily want to have people voting there anymore, and that's put a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of moving parts to this thing here. And I think that Janine is responding to a growing public population, but also a growing public population where more people are getting involved in the voting process. And she's caught between a rock and a hard place. She wants to do more, but she doesn't have the money to do all that because the board, we can't keep raising millage rates for everything around here. We try to do the best we can, given our existing millage rate and fund the priorities that we have. But the second thing is that she has to deal with people who are willing to use their facilities to vote. We can't go in there and tell people we're going to use your facility to vote here. We don't have, and we don't live in that kind of country.
One fairly significant thing the boards are going to be doing in the coming weeks is something called code amendments and the comprehensive plan, and those are kind of convoluted terms for what's a very important topic here. We're actually basically changing our ordinances or laws.
Well, we're revising some of them or adding to them.
Right.
Yeah, that's a process we go through on a regular basis. It's a thriving county. Things change. Some things that we did 50 or 100 years ago are no longer relevant today, so we need to get rid of them. Or some things that we did 50, 100 years ago, because of the way we live today, we need to revise those to reflect the current, our current lifestyle. So the code amendments is exactly that's what we're doing here, is that we're taking a look in at issues brought up by the public, by the staff, by the commissioners, and looking at our code, our ordinances, and revising them accordingly, and adding to that 6-inch book that has all our policies in it, so we can use them for doorstops. I think if people would see how big our book is, it has our code ordinances, and you would really have a lot of compassion for your commissioners and the staff, because we have to sort through that volume in order to make sure that we respond accordingly with all the dictates that are in there. And then the zoning, that's probably the bigger issue, is that one thing I never appreciated until I took this job is that the reason zonings are so important to get right is that they're almost equivalent to imposing a law, making a law. So like any law, once you make a law, it's hard to change it or get rid of it. So you better get it right the first time. So as we go through the year and do our zoning, the reason people come to the board every month is that we have, we have a comprehensive plan that talks about how an area should look like based on input from the public, and then we have a hearing on that and we pass it by the board. And then within those categories, we have subcategories, of zoning. So you might have a a very low density residential area, which means that we can have property in there that lots can be 15,000 square foot or 20,000 square foot. Well, the board every month goes and looks at that, and sometimes we go and we change the zoning within that big category. And at the end of and then in January every year, we take a look to see if we want to change some of the categories on the comprehensive transportation plan. I'm on the comprehensive plan, not the transportation plan. A lot of plans going on right now. So next week we'll be sitting down to see if we want to change any of the categories in the comprehensive plan based on our actions in the last year, and also input from the commissioners and input from the staff. Again, it's very, very important work, because once you change a category, you're getting yourself into a whole new world here, where it ripples down through the community as to, okay, now my category's been changed, and as we all know here, zonings are by their nature can be very controversial if you get it wrong.
Well, it inflames the passions of the people, because those who live in that area, it affects their lives
Right.
every day.
And it goes into the number one thing I've heard is that getting the message out to the community. I just find it remarkable in this day and age where we have so many means of communication. One of the most common complaints that we hear is that we didn't know about it. And, look, you're responsible for getting that message out, and you know all that goes into what you do here, using social media, using, the web page. Just a lot of things we try to do here. But again and again, it comes back to one of the things that I've seen that has caused this board to pause on occasion, is that we don't feel like the community that was infected by some change or some action we're trying to do here has not had the time to properly process what we're trying to do, so we'll hold it for a while or continue it. But I think, again, that just goes to show that, nothing's perfect in this world. We do a really good job of trying to make it that way. We've got a really great staff. But again, there's 760,000 people here, and sometimes they're not tapped into the resources we use here to inform you. And if that happens to be the case, then the board will push the pause button or the continuous button until we make sure that everybody's brought in, so we can make it what I call an informed decision.
Yeah, you touched on something important to us, because I give a presentation to various groups. I talk about when I entered the news business in 1985, you really had just a very few channels of information.
Right.
So for instance, if the county government put something in a local newspaper, the majority of people would get to learn about it. That's not the case anymore. So like you mentioned, I think residents of the county need to be more proactive when they want to learn about this stuff. They need to subscribe to our newsletters, just look at our website and those kind of things.
Well, we have to do a good job also letting them know that it's out there.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to take it like a he said, she said sort of thing here. Again, if the issue is that important, it will quickly rise to the surface, and this is something we need to take a little more time to look at here. And it doesn't do any good to do finger pointing. That doesn't accomplish anything. I think we just take a look at something that, hey, this needs to have more time to be looked at, and we need to breathe on this a little bit longer, and then we'll bring it back and we'll talk about it. But I have not seen a case here, nor what I think that I would tolerate a case where we push something through the system simply for the case of getting it behind us so we can move on. That brings bad law, and bad law always has bad implications later on, because that means the issue never goes away. What you want to have is a robust discussion about something, but then when clearly all sides of it have had their say, you vote on it, and it's been my experience that whether you're on the side that supported it or one that opposed it, when you vote on it, at least nobody can say, well, we didn't get our voice. But more importantly, the issue has now been resolved, and people move on with their lives.
Yeah. County offices are closed this coming Monday for the annual Martin Luther King Jr. observance. The county hosts a ceremony.
Yes.
This year it's going to be at the Jenny T. Anderson Theater. I know you're going to be there, and it's an important day for a lot of folks to take some time out.
I think so. It's another great example of a man who had a message that I think reflects what we all want our community and our lives to be like. And we certainly support the NAACP, who's sponsoring this event, along with the county. We've done that every year for a number of years, and I don't see any reason, why we would not want to continue to support this program. It has an important pause in our lives to look at someone who made such a big difference, and unfortunately paid for it with his life. But in his martyrdom, he achieved some of his goals that we continue to fight for every day to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to be successful in America based on our opportunity.
And again, that celebration will be 10 o'clock Monday at the Jenny T. Anderson Theater that's out at the Civic Center. If we fill it up, we'll have an overflow room at the Civic Center next door so people can watch that celebration, and we'll be hopefully broadcasting that live on our Cobb TV networks as well. So we'll see you out there for that, and I guess we'll see you next week.
You bet. And I just want to know what's one more support for this program on Monday. There's some really great acts by some kids there. And if you just need to come and take a look at some of the talent that's out there in this community. It's a wonderful way to, it's in the middle of the day, you can sleep in, go to brunch, and then come to this program and really enjoy the message that comes from there, and also watching some really talented people in this community.
Yeah, you see some of those kids, it's somewhat humbling.
It is, yep.
When you see what they can do. All right, appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
All right.